Hi, this is Daniela Wolf with Bestie Life, the podcast, and this is your community to support you through the little and not so little events that make up your day-to-day life. From the I've got this moments to the I just can't moments. We are here to empower all women to find and develop the skills they need to find peace, balance, and the bliss in their busy. Through solo episodes as well as interviews with amazing women who share their journey and their story and how it works for you. I hope you find the inspirations to make you laugh, think, as well as maybe rethink what you thought you knew, and connect as we realize that we are all living similar ups and downs and don't have to do it alone. So excited for you to hear this episode, and thanks so much for joining me today. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast, and today I am so excited for you to meet Chanté Dent. She is a personal development and executive coach, as well as a certified emotional intelligence and psychological safety workshop facilitator. And what this means is because she also has her own company, same name, Chanté Dent, whose mission is to really help married women live emotionally healthy lives and experience thriving marriages. And I know we're going to dive into just so many things that entails, because I think that's one of those areas that can easily kind of fall to the bottom. And that was such a brief summary, but thank you so much, Chante, for joining me today.
Absolutely, Daniela. I am happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So can you share a little bit more about your background, your journey, and what brought you to where you are today?
It all started when I came to this realization that marriage, children, that aspect of life called for a healthier version of Chante. Mm-hmm. I, of course, had my own issues that I was working through, teenage years, college years. My history is sexual trauma. And I knew I had to work through a lot, but it really hit me when it came to marriage and motherhood. And on top of that, being an entrepreneur. So many moving parts. I knew that if I wanted to show up as the best version for myself, first of all, to feel comfortable in my own skin, I had to do the work. And when I considered, how I influenced my family, I knew even more so that I had to just maintain this mindset to continuously evolve into a better version of myself.
Yeah, because I think we don't realize how those things can kind of merge and overlap and kind of spill into those other areas. We think everything's so separate, and it's really not. We carry things from when we're little, we carry things from home. It all blends together.
It does.
Yeah. And so how is that showing up for you? Like, what were some of the things that you saw that made you realize focusing on your relationships, your marriage, that was a priority as you were working?
One of the biggest red flags for me was feeling emotionally insecure and unstable. Mm-hmm. I that didn't settle well with me. I just felt scattered and sensitive. And there's definitely benefits to having levels of sensitivity. I believe it definitely enhances the ability to be empathetic and compassionate towards others. So I would never dismiss my level of sensitivity. But in an unhealthy space, I realized it was slowing me down, and it was causing me to become more passive. I was not being that confident woman, that confident wife. And when we talk about the overlap, it reflected in my friendships and my work relationships as well. Because if an unpleasant experience manifested, Daniela, I would walk away wounded. Yeah. And if you know anything about emotional wounds, if we don't address them, they linger, they bleed, and they affect all other areas. So then I found that my creativity was being stifled. And if I had one huge regret, it was not processing an emotional wound in a healthy manner, and it slowed me down. I'm talking about months of delay because I couldn't focus mentally because I was damaged emotionally.
Right. And so you also work with corporate leaders, companies, and things like that. I'm just curious, do you see where work becomes the scapegoat in some formats, and that's how it affects the relationship? Or, what is some of what's coming up that you're seeing kind of across the board?
Absolutely. It clearly can become that scapegoat. And there are two ways that it transpires because we'll have individuals who are excelling in their careers and they receive all of the accolades and they are the high achievers. And we realize, on one hand, yes, we are celebrating with you. For some, not all, for some, that sense of achievement is them running away from problems, concerns, issues. So I'm going to run away from the emotional wound and run towards the goals in my work, in my professional environment. When I get that sense of approval and those accolades, that makes me feel like I've accomplished. But at the same time, there's an imbalance because if I look into my personal closet, I realize there are a lot of unresolved issues. And so, unfortunately, you'll have individuals who can, let's give an example, have an assessment. And the results of this assessment might only reflect their professional environment because that's how they answer the particular questions. But if they were to show that assessment to their spouse or their children, they'd be wondering now who took this assessment because that's not a reflection of you, mom or you, dad. And so that's one way we can escape, the reality of what we're going through internally. On the other hand, we find that if there are some personal issues and we're not able to process those emotional wounds in a healthy manner, we are becoming the colleague, the entrepreneur who is not able to effectively communicate and positively influence our colleagues because we become that person who's disgruntled, who doesn't know how to maintain emotional stability. And so whether we are suppressing or expressing in an aggressive and unhealthy way, at the end of the day, it does not work out well.
Right. And as I'm listening to you, I think of two things that are coming to mind with me. One has to do with our boundaries. And a lot of times, our work can be our passion. And one of the areas I always speak to is, burnout doesn't always come from things we don't like. It can come from the things that we're passionate about when we don't maintain our boundaries and that healthy work-life balance. And so you go all in on work, but you might be neglecting your sleep, your relationships, the way you eat, your physical health and those other things because you're just so passionate. And the other part that I think of too is that validation that I think, like you said, having an assessment and getting ranked high and top performer and you brought in so much money, we see a validation in that, but making it to every soccer game and supporting your partner through something emotionally or having 4 date nights a month or something like that doesn't get that same thumbs up and approval and celebrated as much, I think, as that professional, right?
It's the truth, Daniela. So in response to the 2 points you made, I'm going to start with validation. I made up in my mind, and this is an ongoing, process. I remember early on, again, especially when the children came on the scene, because children will tell the truth no matter what. So you got to make sure you're doing the right thing. But I made a decision early on, to the best of my ability in terms of self-awareness, et cetera. I want to make sure that if my children were in my presence in a different environment outside of our home, that whatever they heard about mom or whatever my husband heard about his wife would be in alignment or closely related to the point that they wouldn't say, okay, we heard that person just praising our mom and saying all these great things about her, but that's not the mom we experience at home. And the same with my husband. It would break my heart if he joined me in a different environment outside of our home and heard responses or phrases and terminology that didn't, fall into alignment with our relationship. And so it has to be this mindset, this ongoing goal that we are going to consistently, because it's not like a one-stop shop, we just get it done and that's it. We have to constantly check in and make adjustments to ensure that we don't drop the ball in the same areas all the time, because we are going to drop the ball. We'll miss the game, we'll miss certain activities and events, but we can make adjustments along the way. We just have to make sure that we are in tune and intentionally creating this healthy balance. And we do that by checking in with ourselves and checking in with our significant others, those who are in our inner circle, who we influence. And it makes a huge difference in terms of, the outcome of our inner peace and our inner joy. I also love that you mentioned boundaries. I love boundaries. Whew,
It's my
nothing like
favorite
a
B word.
healthy boundary. It's
Favorite B word.
favorite B word. And it's like we just need to plaster it all over. Boundaries, healthy boundaries. And I caution people, don't create brick walls. There's a huge difference. We're not encouraging people to create brick walls and boxes where no one comes in and nothing goes out. Creating these healthy boundaries are going to benefit our lives and everyone that we come in contact with. It allows us to be healthy individuals overall. Now, when it comes to boundaries, I love to highlight self-care, but these are two tiers. These are my two tiers of self-care. The first one is a combination of me, myself, and I. And I know it sounds selfish, surface level,
no.
but here's the deal. In the healthy context, when it comes to me, myself, and I, what does that look like in terms of my level of self-care, in terms of implementing healthy boundaries? And many of us understand that when it comes to self-care, it is multifaceted. It's not always the external components. Like I'm going to the nail salon, I'm going to the massage, the massage therapist, I'm going to get my hair done. And, these are all forms of self-care, but it does not end there. We definitely want to implement self-care so that we're looking good. And we also want to make sure that we feel good internally. So what does self-care mean to you is what I ask individuals. And in order to help identify that, what gives you a sense of peace, like internally, a sense of peace, a sense of freedom, and a sense of joy? We know that will look different for everyone, but that's a healthy starting point. What gives me a sense of peace, freedom, and joy? And when second tier is me, myself, and others. When it comes to my relationship with others, how am I implementing self-care? And that's, again, where those healthy boundaries come into play. Do I feel that every time I leave someone's presence, I'm feeling demeaned, belittled? Do I feel like I always need to become this people pleaser in order to maintain a relationship with someone? So creating those checks and balances when it comes to self-care, me, myself, and I. Am I taking good care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally? And if not, what adjustments should I make? And that second tier, me, myself, and others. Am I cultivating healthy relationships? If not, what adjustments do I need to make? Is there any, manipulation going or coming? And then again, we give attention to these areas, we become intentional. It becomes this beautiful ongoing process of living a well-balanced life.
Absolutely. As well as, you talked about with your kids and things like that, we are modeling for them how to do these things for themselves, as well as how we should be treated. We're showing our partners how we should be treated as well, because these are values we want to spread to the people that are around us.
It's true. So Danielle, I have a funny story. This actually just happened yesterday because I do teach my children these components, and they're middle schoolers. So sometimes, let me rephrase that. Most of the time they're like, okay, mom, that's enough. I know it's planting seeds, but here's a funny story. Just yesterday, I'm getting some work done on my laptop and my daughter sits on the couch in my office and she says, Mom, my friend was saying, and I won't give all the details of what she shared, but she shared something that her friend was saying, and it did come across as somewhat of a joking manner, but apparently it was being said too many times. And so she said, so I just told my friend, what you're saying is really bothering me. And I feel, and she filled in the blank. She's my seventh grader. And I looked up and then the first thing is, I am so proud of you for speaking up and sharing how you felt about what your friend was saying to you. And so we dug a little deeper. What was the rest of the conversation like? How did your friend respond? But Daniela, you have to know that put a smile on my face.
Oh, yep. No, I totally get it. And, I started this when my kids were younger. If you've heard my story, I started when they were like 5 and 6 months old, investing in myself, taking that time. And now they're 22 and 18. And he's talking with my daughter the other day, something was happening with one of classes. She's like, all right, I'm good. I'm going to go finish journaling. I'll talk to you later. My son had a stressful thing at work and he's like, yeah, I probably sat there for a couple minutes, but then I started writing it out and getting it out of my head. And, that's where they're learning how to cope, how to handle their stress so that it doesn't spill into all those other areas of their life.
Yes. Absolutely. And we are similar. I often give my kids the opportunity, even if it's not a situation. Well, let's say if when it's a situation that does involve me, those disciplinary types of conversation, even in those moments, I give them that space. If you don't have the words right now, try writing it out. And there have been a handful of times that they have poured their hearts out, their little hearts out in the form of writing, which allows us to initiate that conversation. So I absolutely agree and love what you're doing. It works so well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you talk to these women, you help them. What are kind of like that one place you start with, whether they're suffering with their boundaries, they're not doing the me, myself, and I, or me, myself, and others, whatever tier they're struggling with when it comes to how they're handling their jobs are going to affect their marriages and their relationships. Where do you tell them to at least start? What's that focal point?
The first step for me is always what's really bothering you. Because I feel like people are not given the permission to be honest about what's really going on. And this is get it out. We don't need to be politically correct or grammatically correct. Just let it out. And it's the same format. If verbalizing it is easier for you, if writing it out is more comfortable for you, what's the best way for you to express what's really going on? And I say it's a fun place to start because you never know what you're going to get, but it excites me because oh my goodness, most people are just like, I've never said this before. I've thought about it, but I've never verbalized it. I've never let it out. And that in and of itself is a huge release. And so once we get to that first point, just let it out. I'm not offended. I'm not bothered. You're not going to run me away. What's really going on? And it's so refreshing to experience individuals who have that opportunity to release what's really going on. How do you really feel about that? And you're not going to hurt my feelings. This is your space. This is your opportunity to be as open and transparent as you need to be to get it out. And then we can start on these building blocks, these healthy building blocks, or how are we going to process? And it's one piece at a time, one step at a time. And we create a framework because the goal is they're not relying on me for the rest of their life. Let's create this framework that you can use and implement for any situation that manifests in your life. And then you're able to self-coach and move forward and gain new skills and continuously live this abundantly healthy, emotionally healthy life.
Absolutely. I always believe too, in helping them create the toolkit, create the resources, because like you said, every day is going to be different. Everything that comes up might be different, but to have a variety of ways to approach that so you don't fall into those old habits of how you cope with it are going to be key.
So true. So true.
So what would you say are the kind of the top ways that you invest in yourself?
Yeah. So we talked about journaling. I have journaled since childhood. I still have journal entries from 8 years old. So journaling has always been my number one way to show myself, Chanté, you matter. You might not know how to process this pain, but you matter. And so the first way that I show myself that I matter is to just express what I'm feeling. And I've been doing that since childhood, and it continuously works well for me to release it. I also love nature. I will go outdoors. We have a beautiful neighborhood, a lake nearby, and there are times where I'll even drive a distance just to be out in those environments where I feel like I am just number one with my creator, and just out there in the elements where I feel freer. And it's something about being out there in nature just is my way of releasing and feeling this abundantly sense of freedom and liberation. But I cannot express it even any further. I am all about releasing. I promised myself long ago, do not keep it in. It doesn't work out well. Denial leads to destruction. So you have to release it. And I don't put a box in motion in terms of how I do these things, because I realize the manifestation will look different, any situation, given any environment. And I never want to feel stuck as if I don't have a solution. So if I can ask myself, Chanté, how are you going to heal emotionally, love earnestly, and live freely from this particular situation, from this particular experience, I know I'm going to be okay.
I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also always love to ask about gratitude as part of your self-care, because I think that's so underappreciated and utilized. And so what would you say are your top 2 to 3 things that you're the most grateful for?
So definitely 3. I like to categorize things. And so the first is my personal life. I'm grateful for having the ability to understand the importance of taking good care of my mental state, because when I do that, everything falls into place. The second is my family. I am so fortunate to have a supportive husband and children who we get to have real conversations with about, I say all the things, but we all know the truth. They don't tell me everything, but so far so good. And the third area is my entrepreneurship, just having the confidence to do what I believe I'm called to do to help others live emotionally healthy lives.
No, I love that. And we're so grateful that you're doing that as well, because it is amazing. So how can women or leaderships and companies find you to bring you in to work with you to help them with that transformation?
Simply visiting ChantéDent.com, you'll find all the resources and various ways to contact me there. And I look forward to taking that next step with you.
Awesome. And all those links will be live in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Chante, for joining me today.
My pleasure, Daniela. Thank you.
Thanks so much again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know any questions or comments that you have. Also, if you can please leave an Apple 5-star review so that this episode can be shared with more women. There's 2 quotes that I love. Alone we may be strong, but together we are stronger, as well as when women support each other, incredible things happen. So let's be stronger and incredible together, as well as maybe just have some fun along the way. Thanks so much and talk to you soon. Bye.